We need to take control of the tool called the mind if we're going to live a happy and graceful life without these intrusions. Welcome to Mind, Body, Health, and Politics. I'm your host, Dr. Richard Lewis Miller. I'm an 85-year-old clinical psychologist. I often ask myself and I ask others, who do they think is the boss? The mind or something above and beyond the mind that we call self? You know, when we receive a cut on the back of our hands, and it's not so deep as to require stitches, we assume that it's going to heal, and it does. Over a period of days, a scab forms, which brings the skin together, and then as the skin melts together, the scab falls away, and we are healed again. And if I say to you, did you do that? How did you make that happen? You wouldn't be able to answer me because you don't know how you made that happen. And yet you did. You must have, because I didn't, and no one else in this world did. All that leaves is you. You healed the back of your hand, and you don't know how you did it. And the same is true of many functions in our body. They operate, and they seem to operate on their own, but they're not. They're not operating on their own. There's central command. And we are in charge of central command, because if we're not, who is? We simply haven't learned how to direct certain functions of what we call our human organism. We haven't learned how to direct them yet. We've learned how to direct certain things. We can adjust our breathing. Some of us can adjust our breathing well enough that we can control our blood pressure. People can stretch their muscles. And muscle stretching are called yoga and affect the body physically that way. Some people are able to concentrate in such a way as to reduce a headache. But there are so many things that we don't. And one of the most important functions that so many of us do not know how to do and have not been taught is to control the mind and to control with the mind emotions. And what I mean by that, control the mind and emotions, is that I believe we get to think exactly what we want to think once we know the skill of telling the mind what to do and not letting it be the boss. And we get to feel the emotions that we want to feel once we take control of our emotional state. In other words, we get to set our own attitude, even though there appear to be forces in the universe at times that are causing our attitude. But that is not what has to be the case, because we can take control of our emotions, our attitudes, and our thoughts. What it takes is practice. It takes practice over time, and that is true with almost everything in life that we get any good at. We have practiced it over and over and over again. Oh, I know there are certain people that are, quote, naturals. They get up at bat and they can immediately hit well. That's true, and they're extremely unusual. But for the rest of us mere mortals, it takes practice, 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 and practice. But I believe that the practice of practicing to control the mind and not letting it be the boss is a very important and worthwhile practice. Because in my 64 years of practice, called professional clinical practice, so many of the people that I have worked with suffer from a mind out of control. And I'm not talking about what's referred to as psychotic, or in the vernacular, crazy out of control. I'm talking about everyday out of control, like self-criticism, self-negation, self-loathing, any kind of self-negativity, to me, is a mind out of control. Because when we control our minds, the best thing we can possibly do is be nice to ourselves, to say appreciative things, to say gratitude for what we are, to be encouraging for ourselves, to be admiring of ourselves. And don't go getting worried about this old-fashioned notion that if you say too many nice things about yourself, you'll suddenly get a big head. I heard that when I was a kid, too. That's a bunch of baloney. There's no such thing as too big a head. There is a thing as acting as if you're better than other people. That's another whole topic, because I don't believe that anybody's better than anybody else, but we'll get into that. I'm talking about self-praise is a worthy thing to do in any shape, manner, or form, and negation is not. Any form of self-negation brings us down, and any form of self-approval brings us up. And I think we all agree that we'd rather feel up than down. Certainly I would. No, kidding aside, I think that's a universal. Well, I'll take that back. There is no such a thing as a universal. There are always these outliers. Somebody will point out to me that, well, what about the masochists? They don't want to feel good. They want to feel bad. Well, maybe I'm not going to get into that right now. Some other time. It's a fun topic. We need to take control of the tool called the mind if we're going to live a happy and graceful life without these intrusions. Intrusions are whether is when everything is going well, you're having a nice day, and all of a sudden some nasty thought comes into your mind, something critical, something you did wrong, something you're not proud of, you're ashamed of, any kind of negation. It's not beneficial. That's not constructive criticism, that whole business. Oh, it's just constructive criticism. No, putting a person down is not constructive criticism. Constructive criticism perhaps is telling somebody how they might be able to do it better or improve by offering them a tool, which is what I'm offering you right now. Tools for taking control of your mind so that your life is easier. Now, what about the tools? An easy tool to start out with is to take 60 to 180 seconds 4 or 5 times a day and tell your mind what to do. It doesn't even matter what you tell your mind what to do, but I'll make it easy, counting numbers. 60, 120 seconds, you count numbers. See, the important thing isn't that you're counting numbers or you're thinking about some project or you're thinking about on the beach with sun and water. What's more important is that you're directing the mind to do something over and over and over and over again, so you get used to giving the direction and your mind gets used to taking the direction. That is the connection that we want to make. The connection between us giving direction and the mind taking direction immediately. All right? Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, up to for 60, 120, or for 180 seconds, 4 or 5 times a day. You do that 4 or 5 times a day, every day of the week. Just get into a routine for it and watch what happens over the months. Watch what happens over the months. In phase 2, we're going to get to, after we do with the repetitive of a particular thing like numbers, what kind of directions to give it. But right now, we're focusing on you getting used to sending the direction to the mind and the mind getting used to receiving it and doing exactly what you tell it. So, until next time, this is Dr. Richard Lewis Miller reminding you that good health is worth fighting for, and it's essential for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.